All right, as everyone's still getting in here, I want to respect everyone's time, and I wanted to start with something, a quote by Deepak Chopra or Chopra. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name every single time, but I think it's Chopra. And he said, "All great changes are preceded by chaos." All great changes are preceded by chaos. And I think we could all agree that over the last, I don't know, what has it now been?
48 hours.
To 96 hours, something like that. We've experienced a little bit of chaos, whether that's from our own delving into what does this mean, or looking at all of the people who are real estate specialists and know exactly what's going on in our industry on TikTok, or the news articles that are being written by people who have never done anything real estate related in their life. Yet there's a lot of chaos going on. And what Deepak says here, when he says all great changes are preceded by chaos, I want to share with you guys that I truly believe that the best is yet to come in our industry. Because for so long, like I have it right here, because one of our agents gave me the signs. For so long, this was our value proposition as a buyer's agent. This is the sign writer that came off of one of our agent's signs when I told them, for the love of God, don't use that anymore. And that's no longer the value proposition that we're going to share. We're going to adjust our industry together with every single person that's on this call and every single person that's engaged in our offices to turn this into the professional environment, not just on the listing side of things, but also on the buyer side of things, that it should have been from the very beginning. The same way that you would go to your doctor and your doctor would ask you to sign disclosures and things like that, stating, hey, doc, when you're done treating me, I'm going to pay you. Or when you go to a lawyer and you have a consultation with them and they say, hey, if I'm going to work with you, I'm going to need a retainer up front. That's the same way that we're going to start treating our industry in the professional environment that all of us truly longs to have. And here's what I truly believe. And before I hand it over to Sean, I believe this, that every single one of us that's here is going to experience growth in a greater way than we ever have. Number one, because this is forcing us to get out of our comfort zone. And number two, because we're going to be here learning, educating ourselves, and moving forward in ways that so many other agents are choosing not to, because a lot of them are going to put their hands under their butt. They're going to sit there and say, I don't like it. I don't wanna, I didn't choose this. And you're going to outpace them so much faster because you're choosing to change now. So while it may feel chaotic, I want to promise you that when you take this journey with us and you choose to change the things that you're doing and you choose to rise up to this occasion, you will make more money than you ever have in your life, because you're going to truly show how valuable you are and how committed you are to making great things happen for people. It's the reason why you got into this business to begin with. You got in this business to change your life in a way that working for somebody else couldn't. And I want to share with you, that dream is here, it is alive, and it is well, and we've only just begun. So with that, I want to hand it over to my friend Sean Rawls, who's going to lead us in our mastermind today. Sean, anything you want to add to that?
Only that I disagree with everything that you said, and I think we're all going to die.
I'm out. See ya.
No, I think, Scott, it's probably a pretty good opening. Let me take a quick poll with all the people on here. My thought was, I thought we needed to spend a little bit of time talking about this NAR settlement stuff a little bit, just from a perspective. Is that something you guys want to do, or do you want to forego that and go into the topics that were advertised? I can get into all that, but I thought I might spend a few minutes kind of talking about the NAR stuff. Is that cool with you guys?
It looks like yes.
Yes.
The general consensus in the chat is yes, let's do that.
So let me give you some thoughts. First thing I would tell you is, if you're posting about this, stop. If you're posting about this and making commentary and complaining about it one way or the other, don't do that. If you guys don't, if you don't have, I'm happy to have people chat back, but if you're just talking in the background, you probably should turn your microphone off.
I'm taking care.
So I started making notes and I wrote notes in 3 categories. And one is what's positive about this. The other is what's negative about this. And then the other is what's uncertain about this. And let's start with the positive side of it. And what's positive about this, in my opinion, is number one, we have a settlement and we have terms, right? It's no longer this looming thing. I've always said, if you just tell me what I'm fighting, I'm a lot better off knowing what I'm fighting than not knowing what I'm fighting. So we have a settlement, and the good news is we've got 4 months before the hammer comes down on this, and it has to become, everything has to be done a certain way. Until then, there's going to be some pushback between now and then at the kitchen table here and there. But we've got 4 months to prepare and get ready and sharpen our saw and become more skilled at the profession that all of us have. One of the things that I've always said about real estate that's odd about our industry, and I used this on listing presentations 30 years ago, by the way, and I still talk about it today, and that is we're an odd industry because we pay idiots and experts the exact same thing.
No,
Right?
don't all go post that on Facebook. That's the way that that's the truth though. Yes.
Well, it is the truth because because of the offer of compensation that we have out there on FMLS or in MLS, it's if you sell my house, this is what we're going to pay you, whether you're an idiot agent or whether you're an expert agent. So that's kind of funny. Now, that saying might for the first time become a little more outdated coming up because now I think the experts are going to get paid more, and I think the idiots are going to get paid less. Potentially, I don't know entirely, but I think potentially.
Yeah.
It really depends on some of the things that we talk about in terms of what's uncertain. Another thing that I think is positive is I think we're going to come up with some new innovations, some new strategies, and some new structures for doing this business that for the people that run towards the change are going to come out winners. If you remember a mastermind that we did a month or 2 ago where I gave you a list of things, one of the things I said that was really important for you to do is to become an early adopter and not a late adopter when change is presented to you. This is a great example of a change that's coming our way, and no amount of bitching or complaining is going to change it. It is what people that are in different parts of the universe that get to govern these things, and we just have to figure out how to play by the rules. We don't make Scrabble. When we play Scrabble, we have to play by the rules. And right now, we're having to play by the rules of the real estate gods, and the rules are going to change. So those of you that are selling real estate, your goal is to run to this change as fast and as hard as you can and figure out how to make these rules work for you so that you can continue to win at this game. Because I guarantee you, like everything else and like always, they're going to be winners and they're going to be losers in people that finish first and people that finish fast or last. We want to be on the top echelon of that because we are not afraid of it and we kind of move forward and we just figure it out. We don't have a lot of the answers now, by the way. So a lot of the answers are kind of built into the attitude that you've got in looking at this. So I would say overall, just look for the positive side of all of this because it's going to be important for you. Here's another one. Your buyer presentations are about to get much, much better. In fact, some of you are just going to have a buyer's presentation where you haven't had one. So the good news is there's going to be a level of professionalism in this business on the buyer side that has kind of been lackadaisical and lazy for far too long. And ultimately, I think this is a growth opportunity for all of us. I think this is, I've been through a lot of changes in I was licensed before Beretta in 1993. And in 1993, what's interesting about 1993 is the reason Beretta came up is buyers weren't represented, right? So they didn't have representation. Everybody worked for the seller. And then all of a sudden they said, hey, buyers are getting screwed out there. We need to have a platform and we need to change the law where sellers are actually going to have to pay a buyer's agent's commission at the closing table so the buyer can be represented. And if you were in the business at that time, it was chaos then too. People lost their minds. They didn't understand why we had to represent buyers, why we had to pay for them, blah, 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 blah. But that became very normal in this industry, and it's the industry that you guys all know and enjoy today. And now we're kind of taking away some of the things. And I think potentially, depending on how this plays out, potentially, I think the buyer ends up getting the short end of the stick a little bit. But I think again, I think there's going to be some innovations and some workarounds that probably level that up. But initially, the first pushback of it, from my perspective, is I think the real estate agents that are weak and buyers in general are the ones that need to figure out how to win at this game. All right, negative. What's negative about this for me is I think they're kind of muddying the water in terms of compensation. If you look at this settlement really closely, it's prohibiting the offer of a buyer compensation on the MLS and only on the MLS. It says you can offer it on your website. It says that a seller can offer it to a buyer. And I think we're used to going to the MLS to look at what the rules of the game are. I think we're going to have to go to a company's websites to look at their inventory to see what the compensation offer is, if any, on a piece of property. Because it may be that once all this goes into play, it may be that when you're sitting at the kitchen table and you're listing a house and you say, look, and they say, I don't have to pay a buyer's agent commission. And you go, you never had to. Right? You never had to. We could have said zero for the last umpteen years. You've never had to pay. The reason we pay a buyer's agent commission is because we want to create the most amount of exposure for you and your property. And we want to attract the most amount of buyers and create the most competitive market with the most interested parties so that we can get multiple offers, drive your price up, and allow you to keep most of the money there. So none of that's really changed in this scenario. And we would recommend that if you want to still play by those rules and make sure that your property it appeals to every potential buyer and doesn't prohibit people from looking at or wanting to make an offer from an economic standpoint, that we offer a commission to a buyer. We just can't do that on the MLS based on whatever the NAR signed, but we can do that as a company, and we can do that. You can do that as a seller on your own. There's no prohibiting of paying a buyer's agent to sell your property. And in fact, I still think it's probably the best route you should take as a seller. So I just think it's the negative side of that is it's why if it just seems odd that they're saying you can't offer it in the MLS, but you can offer it in other places. That seems very odd to me. And I think where we're talking about transparency, I think they're kind of taking transparency away. Scott?
What they're really saying is, we don't want the liability, you can have it.
Yes. I agree.
Sean, quick question for you, because I read the settlement as well, and it seemed like they were trying to swap out where we're no longer allowed to say what the compensation is offered to buyers, but they are going to add something for a seller contribution instead in lieu of.
Yeah, they're calling it concession, a seller concession. So for whatever reason, I mean, again, I think NAR is, in my opinion, I think this whole thing with NAR has been damaging for NAR to its members, right? I mean, they're supposed to be the thing that protects us all as realtors and protects our livelihood and whatever. And all this stuff went down and what it is. I'm sure they had good intentions, but by the same token, I don't think they've done the world a lot of favors in conceding this. They just felt like if we just gave up on these things and we made a deal, that it was better for our members to have certainty and have it resolved than to have it looming out there. And I do understand that. However, the fact that a seller concession can go towards a commission, and again, it's all under the NAR umbrella of an MLS. Take it outside of that, Like, I think we're gonna end up having, if I'm guessing, I think we're gonna end up having where you go somewhere and you see what the commission being paid to a buyer's agent is, and it's probably just gonna say negotiable. Right? So it's just like, bring us an offer. If the math works, we'll pay it. If the math doesn't work, we won't pay it. Whereas through the MLS, it does say that we have to pay the buyer's agent. Now they're taking that out, and now it's basically just becoming more negotiable through or under NAR.
Yeah,
So
and Sean, one of the likely things that also happened here that even caused these settlements to happen was, number one, Remax settled immediately. Anywhere settled immediately. And while every single one of these settlement agreements state this is not an admission of guilt, the general public believes that a settlement is an admission of guilt. Even as Richard and I explained today in our in the team meeting, there are often times where we here in this office say, let's just settle because it'll cost us less than attorney fees than us going and fighting and actually winning this. It's really a loss net. So when they settled, and then when Remax settled and Anywhere settled, it put Keller Williams in a position where it made it really hard to go and have the appeal process, even though it could have been done. That the logical thing was, if two companies settled, we should probably just do it. NAR followed suit. If everyone had stood their ground, we'd probably be in a different position today.
I agree. Well, and what's interesting is there's still about I think I was listening to something with Steve Murray the other day, and I think there's like 50 or 60 brokerages out there that are still part of NAR that aren't covered in this. That just they're just left hanging out to dry and figure it out on their own. So
there's 1.6
interesting.
million members of NAR, and this suit covers just over 1 million of them.
That's correct. That's correct.
And yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, the concession thing is going to be interesting, Tim. I don't know. Again, I think what's going to happen is we're going to have to figure things out over the next 4 to 6 to 8 to 12 months, because basically the new standards of operation are just going to change and they're going to morph. And for the people that are getting in the business in the next 6 months, they're not going to care. It's just going to be new. It's just going to be the way the business is done for them. It's all of us who have this memory in our cachet of how we've all done things and the comfort zones we've gotten into. We're just going to have to change some things, and we're going to have to change some dialogues. But the biggest is, particularly in Florida, like here in Atlanta, where I'm at, we don't, buyer's forms are pretty much a given, right? I mean, but you guys don't have the same paperwork that we have up here. So it's a little bit of a bigger adjustment for you in terms of how you work with the buyer. But I think I do think a positive note of it is, if you get your buyer's presentation really good, and the idea is you have to have a written agreement now to work with a buyer, that's not cloudy or fuzzy. Like and I think that's a good thing. Ultimately, I think that's a really good thing. But I think that I think it's if you one of the things that you would embrace on that is, no longer are we going to waste our time with buyers who aren't going to perform. Like we're going to know up front whether we're going to date this person or we're not, and it's going to be a little bit more speed dating on the front end, and we're not going to slow play it to figure that out for the most part. I don't think housing prices are going to go down, by the way. Scott, are you raising your hand?
Yes,
Scott
and I think
Bethune and
Vicky might be first.
Yeah, Vicky, go ahead.
No, so I was just putting in the chat. I'm talking every day with a bunch of agents across the country, and what they're saying is that, they're seeing they've already implemented the buyer agreement, and they've been doing this for years. So everybody's been doing it, and so they're just saying now it's just going to be now brought to the forefront. So it's going to be mainstream. And so we now have to just show our value.
That's exactly
so as long as we, and it's going to weed out these agents that are not professional. We show the value. It's going to be a difference between, are you wanting to be represented in a fiduciary manner? You've got either a customer or a client, you choose. It's a contract. I'm here to protect you. And then it's going to be a conversation with a seller and the buyers. And yes, change is coming. and lots of changes are coming, but we just need to provide value and do the best we can. That's it.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I think a lot of this hinges on how buyer compensation gets promoted in the months going forward. Because if we kind of get to the point, like right now, everybody's saying, "Oh my God, we're gonna have to handle our buyer's agent commissions on our own." But ultimately, that doesn't really say that. I mean, it very well could be that it just isn't offered on the MLS, and it's business as usual with all the listings, and there's an offering of a buyer's agent commission on that side, just not put in the MLS and it's put somewhere else. That doesn't change a lot of things. However, if that doesn't happen and everybody says we're not going to pay buyers brokers commissions, and it's just going to be up to the buyers brokers to negotiate the commission they're going to earn, then yes, I think we're going to see a lot of pressure on agents that are newer getting into the business. I think we're going to have a lot of pressure on people that are not very professional and just do 1 or 2 transactions a year if they just happen to stumble across something. I think that's going to get harder to compete at that level. But my gut kind of says I think we're going to find a workaround on this.
Okay,
I think we're going to find a way to kind of keep things fairly normal, because I think we all realize that the way we've been doing things is again, I think we've done a really good job with it, and I think we've served buyers and sellers at a really high level with some absolute clarity. Where we're not clear, I'm not entirely sure. Everybody signs all the documents. Everybody sees net to seller sheets. Everybody sees what things are going to cost. Again, I think if it sharpens up buyer presentations, then maybe that closes the door on that uncertainty, but we'll see. Scott?
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Thank you, Sean. My question was, beyond the MLS changes and the need for a buyer representation agreement required now, does the fact that Keller Williams settled and this settlement, is it just duplicative? Is it overlap? Do we,
Yeah,
as Keller Williams agents, have any better? It's just an overlap?
Yeah, it's overlap.
Thank you.
The other thing I think is negative about this is I think we're entering a new era of learning new things the hard way. And I think what that means is you're going to have to go out there and screw some things up to get it right. And I think you're going to have to lose a buyer or 2 or 3. I think you're going to have to screw up a listing presentation or 2 or 3. And then go, oh, okay, now I know what I'm going to do. And I think the only way to kind of minimize the screw up and learning the hard way is to stay completely plugged into these offices. And I think that we need to make sure that if you screw something up, don't keep it private. Like, talk to your team leader, come to a team meeting, explain, I was at a listing presentation 2 days ago. This is what I said. I screwed up. I should have done this. This is what I'm going to do from now on. This is what I learned. I mean, I think the more we share our experiences, the shorter our learning curve is going to be as a group. So just know that failure is going to be a part of this change, and it's going to suck a little bit. And so you need to get really purposeful about your lead generation and look at it like you have to lead generate like crazy, because you're going to have some potential hiccups in your conversion rates that you haven't had before just because of the change. And the more we communicate those, I think we'll just shorten the learning curve for everybody as a group, which only benefits everybody anyway. So if that makes sense.
Mr. Macatopo?
What's that? Yeah.
Mr. Topo?
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Sean. I thought of a couple of other thoughts, and maybe you agree, maybe you don't disagree, but I think it just kind of goes back to the emphasis of how important listings have always been and now they become even more important.
For sure.
That we should just continue to be listings focused, right? Listings create, leads create listings, and then obviously leverage. And then another positive that I was thinking of, and maybe everyone agrees, maybe they don't, but we could stand to lose a lot of these weaker agents. Right, there could be.
So, yeah, I mean, if you go back to idiots and experts, the experts are going to increase market share.
Yeah.
For sure.
And the people that stay in the business, now we've got real competition.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, I think you're dead on, buddy. Not surprisingly. Allison?
Hey guys, how are you?
Great, thank you.
So
Yeah, but some of them are still like,
about it and trying to, tune in as best as I can. So I don't know if this is something that's already been addressed, but in the event that you're working with a buyer who is getting a mortgage and the seller is not offering any sort of compensation, and they sign a buyer brokerage agreement, is that something that needs to be discussed on the front end with a lender to ensure that there's funds to be able to
Yes.
compensate that buyer working with an agent?
Yes, absolutely. Now, I will
Can
tell
it
you
be
this,
built into
Allison.
the loan? Are there going to be like programs for that? Because there are, obviously multiple echelons of the market, and every buyer is going to be different. And, if you want to work with somebody and they can't afford to pay you, I mean, that's a disservice to that buyer at that point.
No, it is, and that's kind of a T-ball waiting to be addressed in the industry, I think. But here's what I think is going to. I think this is not only an opportunity for the real estate industry to innovate. I think it's going to be an opportunity for the mortgage industry to innovate. My guess is, if you look at like VA loans or something where buyers can't pay their commission, like it has to be in there. I think that they have to figure that out in fast, because they got 4 months to do it based on this thing. And same with FHA, Scott, you're correct. And then what I think we're going to have, my guess is, I wouldn't be surprised that, we're in business with Supreme Lending. And Supreme, I think I've known Pat Flood for 30 years, and he's probably one of the most innovative mortgage guys in the country. I wouldn't be surprised if him or others like him came up with an innovative lending tool that said, hey, in the event that you have to pay your own commissions, we're going to put that into the loan, and we have a loan program that allows us to do that. I think we're like 72 hours in on this news flash, and I think the entire world of real estate and mortgage is now scrambling at high levels to figure out how to implement and work within these new rules and strategies that's coming in the new games being printed that are going to come out in July. So I just think we have to, again, what we don't know and what's uncertain is, we don't know how this is going to play out yet. Like, there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty, but you can't kind of buy into that stuff. You have to just trust that we're going to figure it out. My guess is the lending institutions of the world are going to figure out how to work with us and work with buyers that might get caught in a situation like that, because it's entirely possible, the way this is written, when you look at it, how you could have a gap there. And my guess is they're going to figure out how to do it, because not just because it's good for you and a buyer, because it might position them as a really great partner as a lender for people who are selling real estate. So it's a smart, again, I think we're going to see all kinds of new innovative things come up from agents, from real estate companies, from mortgage companies and lenders and banks, to kind of, I think it's just going to be kind of cool to see what changes, how people address some of the changes to work for them and to create more competitive advantages for them in their field of expertise.
We've entered a new era of forced innovation. There's going to be a lot of innovation that happens during this time, not because everyone was expecting it, but because everyone is mandated that they must change. Just like when COVID happened, we had to change our businesses. This is not a whole lot different than us being thrown into COVID before. We're just looking at a different way to change our business, to move us forward in a really, really strong direction. Tim.
Being that we do need to kind of change some of our presentations a little bit, it's probably going to require that new listing agreements and buyer agreements come out from the state associations. Being that this is brand new, do you have any anticipated timeline of when they may revise some of that paperwork?
I haven't heard when they're going to. Richard might have an insight on that. I know we've already started working on a buyer document for our offices to address this until that happens. So Richard, I think, is in the final stages, if we don't already have that done.
Yes,
of
we are in the
getting-
final stages of it.
Yeah, we're almost across the goal line with having a document we're going to have you guys be able to use from a buyer standpoint. On the listing side, I think we're okay with that at the moment. And but yeah, I think all the state associations are going to be rolling out new documents as it pertains to buyers and
Because
sellers.
the listing side is tricky because it allows us to pay buyer commissions. We just can't advertise it. So
Well,
that should be a very simple workaround, I would think.
Let's
Well, and
keep it
truthfully, that's
clear.
or the way they've written it, it's going to be curious to see how they interpret it, because it could be like, we don't need to change it. You can offer it or not. I mean, they're just not going to put it in the MLS, right? So,
Right.
and if it's in there and your company says, we're now going to have, I mean, if we're smart, somebody's going to go out there and just start a website for all the companies to load their listings and compensations on it, and we can just go there and look it up.
Well-
But instead of going to their individual company sites.
So KW, Remax, Anywhere, and Berkshire Hathaway have a co-project that they actually put a hold on back in 2018 called Upstream, where it was a workaround around the MLS, which they could go and renew that project, and it would essentially do the exact same thing nationwide.
I forgot about that. You're right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the infrastructure is there for sure. I'm sure sitting on somebody's computer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Michael Trelongo, you're muted, buddy.
So I just had a question. It came up in coaching yesterday. We were talking about the very same thing and how we need to lean into this and be close to the information and stay abreast of that. But we also talked about the buyer's broker agreement, and we also talked about what it used to be, what it meant. Something like that doesn't necessarily hold up really well in a court of law. However, I think it needs to be more of a contract and less of an agreement now, because your pay may depend on this particular form. That's A. And B, we used to be very specific or somewhat specific in what that buyer was looking for. And I think now we need to kind of broaden that a little bit, because buyers are going to be paying your commission. They might be a little bit more stringent upon, okay, well, you said we were looking for a property in Broward. Well, we bought something in Palm Beach. So now your contract doesn't work. So I think we need to be a little bit more, we need to kind of really lean on Richard here to make these buyer broker agreements a little bit more ironclad.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. And I will tell you this. One of the cool things about me being here in Atlanta is we have I would probably say the legal representation that develops the forms for the Georgia Association of Realtors is good or better than anybody in the country. We haven't really worried about the lawsuits in Georgia here because there's a guy named Seth Wiseman, and Seth developed our forms, and he's been the guy that's architected them for probably 20 or 30 years. And he's had in there for the last 3 years that you can't participate as a seller in any kind of a class action lawsuit or any. He saw all the discussions around this years ago, and he started putting in all that information in our documents. So my guess is once we get the stuff that's updated here in Georgia, I'm gonna get them down to Richard, and we're gonna compare the documents. And we might create our own document outside of the Florida Association document that because we think it's better and does exactly what you're talking about, Mike. So I'm completely on board with you, and I think you're dead on. Dead on.
Richard,
the other thing is I don't think on the buyer side, there's a couple of interesting things, by the way. I used to, back before there was Keller Williams, I was with Remax for a long time, and what I loved about Remax is I was my own boss and I got to run my own business and I got to make my own decisions. And when we started Keller Williams, it's the thing I loved about Keller Williams as well, that we let everybody make their own decisions and run their own business. Like, we don't tell you, here's the commission you have to charge on a listing, and here's a commission you have to charge for a buyer. But I will tell you, just to plant a little seed of growth opportunity. Most of the big dependent brokerages that we all know and are familiar with don't allow that level of flexibility for their agents. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how they push this down, because I think, we're obviously going to see some examples where a menu of services for buyers might come into play, where you might just write a contract for a buyer and negotiate. They've already found their house and they want somebody to help them. I think there's going to be places for that to exist, and where you guys have the ability to kind of do whatever you want to do commission wise. Other people in other brokerages won't. So I would just stay tuned to what frustrations people are having out there and what they're struggling with, whether it's as an industry person or whether it's in their organization or whatever it is, because I think this might actually create some more opportunity for us as a company because of the way that we're structured and the amount of autonomy we give you guys as agents in our model. So just kind of know that you're in a good place to kind of navigate this to your level of comfort, and figure out how you want to run your business and where you want to derive your profits from, and how hard you want to work for your profits, and what your margins are going to be. That's up to you, which is, I think, a really cool thing to underscore, because as we look at this, I've got a lot of friends in some of the dependent brokerages, and they're a little frustrated because they have rules around what they can't do commission wise. And this is kind of creating a lot of uncertainty around what some people are thinking is going to happen with commissions on the front end. We'll see how it all shakes out. But right now, I think the uncertainty of how this is all going to play out has people, thinking the worst and being fear-based, but there's really not a lot of evidence to support that that's justified at this point in time.
Richard has something he wants to add. Richard, go for it.
Yeah, Sean, I think you were right on with the last comments that you made. I believe you're going to see new brokerage models coming out where they're charging $500 to write a contract for a buyer. The cheap shops, no different than, many years ago when I said you couldn't charge with billboard 1%. And, a couple of years later, those guys are all gone. This is about understanding it. But I want to go back to what you were talking about with the contracts, because there's a lot of confusion with the agents out there now, thinking that they have to change what they're doing now.
No,
Guys, you've got 4 months until this goes into effect, if it holds. In those 4 months, FAR will come out with new contracts. Everything's being worked on. They work on contracts constantly. But unlike there was one guy who designed all the contracts for Georgia, there's a room full of a dozen attorneys who will argue about the contracts forever. But they are coming. The buyer brokerage agreement, last week I presented that to the ALC here in Fort Lauderdale. I'm awaiting to get responses back from them. I asked them to mark it up, give me comments, give me feedback. As soon as I get that back, I'll be bringing it to the ALCs and the other offices for their comments and feedbacks. Then we will come up with a finalized document. It's the exclusive buyer brokerage agreement with all of the commission agreements, there's 3 or 4 different addendums that go with the buyer brokerage agreement. We'll have ready for all of you guys to go. I'm hoping by middle of next month.
Richard, I would say instead of waiting for your ships to come in at Fort Lauderdale, go ahead and get them out to Coral Springs and Aventura for feedback. And there's no reason to wait. If you're getting feedback, you're getting feedback, and then we don't have to wait any longer.
I will do that.
The only other thing to talk about on this is going back to the buyer brokerage agreement. You guys have got to get really, really good and prepared to deliver value in a conversation with somebody on the front end. Like your buyer's brokerage, your buyer's presentation needs to be better and more solid than your listing presentation.
Yes.
You just need to treat it as an absolute priority in your business. I think you'll like the results of it if you put some time and effort into it, because it's just going to strengthen you as a professional, and you're going to be able to have not only a formal conversation sitting down to talk about a buyer brokerage agreement, but just even on the fly or over a cocktail party or on the soccer field, you're just going to be more dialed in to deliver your value audibly than you've ever been before. So just get to work on making sure that you don't casualize anything about the value you provide to a buyer. Like, we used to joke, like, what do you do when you get a listing? And if you say, I'll put it in the MLS, that's a pretty stupid thing to say. Like we have a computer database that's going to do it. It's going to immediately expose it to 30,000 people in the marketplace. I mean, make sure that you get good at expanding the detail of value that's behind everything you do and delivering it in a simple and professional way, but don't leave it up to chance for them to assume that there's value you're providing. Spoon feed them every bit of value that you're going to provide when you sit down to talk to somebody.
Sean, most of the agents have never done a buyer presentation.
I know, it's scary.
Right? They get a phone call from a buyer. I saw a house on Zillow. Can you meet me there? And they get up and run for it. We have got to start training to the buyer presentation part of this. And in respect to that, I've been talking to the agents. One of the good things that came out of this is that NAR is now offering the ABR designation for free for the balance of this year. The boards, both the Miami and the Beaches boards, are doing multiple classes for this in their locations over the next couple of months. You can also go online, sign up, do it at your own time frame for free. As I shared this morning, my hallucination would be that Keller Williams has more ABR designations than anyone else. This is what will make the difference. That course is all about understanding your value proposition in working with buyers.
And isn't Jackie Ellis coming into doing the list your buyer soon?
Monday.
This is on Monday.
She's awesome. She's
We got
a
to
badass.
move the location over to the board office in Wilton Manor because we needed a bigger training space. But the space is still limited, so we need you guys register for it now so it can be set up and prepared for. And then next Tuesday, you've got Gary Keller, Jay, and Jason doing their Value Squared class, which is also going to be addressing what your value proposition is, particularly for buyers.
And what I would tell you guys is I would be in absolute research and development mode as a business owner. And it's anything you can get your hands or eyes on to look at a way of explaining or doing or presenting. Take it all in and realize that some of it's going to resonate with you and some of it's not. But the more information you can suck into your system, the better your presentation is going to end up on the back end. So I just would stay out of judgment, get into heavy curiosity, and learn as much as you can from other people and what they're doing and what they've got to share and how they've won in the past and the documents they're using, the scripts they're using, the timing they're using. I mean, everything is open for remodeling in your buyer brokerage presentation. So just go to everything you can for a little while to make sure that when you're ready to roll with it, you're confident knowing that you're not missing anything.
Mike.
Yeah, so just to piggyback on what Sean was saying, and this is something we said in yesterday's coaching class as well as the ABR designations and the fact that they were free. Knowing your value proposition, being able to report that very clearly to the buyer and listing your buyer but you just use everything that you use from your listing presentation and just do it in reverse. So in my listing presentation, I'm telling people I'm selling properties at 102% of the market value versus the MLS at 94%. Well, now let's see what the MLS buyer's agent is saving their buyers, and then know your number. Yeah, well, on average, I'm getting about 92% of the MLS for my buyers. So you have to know your numbers and be able to purport that value. And you got to win that presentation the same way. It's a reverse listing presentation. You're going to tell them how you're going to save them money and time.
Well, and I agree with that. And
So it's just flip the script.
the other unspoken part of that, Mike, is it may not be that I save you any money at all. It may be that I get, because of my relationships with the other agents in the marketplace, that out of 15 offers that get presented, I win those multiple offer situations. So I may not save you money, but I may get you the house you freaking want, and I may get it over everybody else.
I just got a commercial question in the chat for Stephen Follis, and I want to answer it for you, Stephen. He asked, I understand that those will not be allowed to show compensation on the MLS, even for commercial listings. And I want to be clear, that does not preclude you from putting compensation into places like LoopNet or CoStar or any of those other portals. You can continue to do that as a commercial agent. Doesn't stop you at all.
That's correct. All right, so let's go into the questions that I had promoted to talk about today on our mastermind. Scott, are we done? Do we have till 2:30 or 3?
We have till 2:30.
Okay, so we've got 40 minutes. All right, so I'm going to rip through a few questions, and here's what I want to do. As I go through these, write them down. You're not going to be able to answer them at the moment, but what I'd like you to just do is I'd like you to really spend some time after this call to carve out, to really think about the answers to these questions. And I'd love to get your feedback on what any ahas you had from the questions that we talk about for the next 40 minutes. Is that fair?
Yeah.
All right. So the first question is, what am I not convinced of? What am I not convinced of? And under that, I've got written, if you're not convinced, you cannot convince. And if there's anything in your business that you are not convinced of is a good idea, for example, like if you're not a buyer in this market because of interest rates, then how are you going to ask somebody else to be a buyer in this market when interest rates are what they are? Like, where are you not in alignment with what you're asking and wanting people to do, but you're not willing to do for yourself, or you're not completely convinced that it's the right thing to do, right? So you've got to find a framework where you are convinced of everything that you are doing in this business. And if there's anything that you're not convinced about, know that that's a weakness, and it's a lack of alignment that's going to show up in your business, and you need to find a way to close that gap. And it may be that you need to talk to somebody about your perspective to get a different perspective around it. But if you're not convinced, you cannot convince. 2, are you clear about the value that you provide? And are you comfortable talking about the value that you provide in a competitive situation? What makes your value unique, special, valuable, compelling? Are you clear about the value that you provide? And the other question to that is your clients, or are your clients and customers, are they clear about your value when you tell them about it? I think we're, when we sit down years ago, we used to, and Michael Trelongo, you'll appreciate this. I mean, we would sit with new agents all the time, and new agents, we would say, what are you afraid that people are going to ask you in a listing presentation? Like, what are you worried they're going to ask you that you're not going to have an answer for? And everybody had questions that they were afraid somebody was going to ask them. And we thought, and finally we just said, why don't you just work on finding an answer to those questions so that you're not afraid of somebody asking you the question? I used to be a tennis coach years ago, before real estate, and if your backhand was weak and you ran around your backhand on the court because you didn't have confidence in your backhand, we would have a lesson where you would do nothing, but you wouldn't be allowed to hit a forehand. You would only hit backhands, and you would hit them one after another after another. And we would hit thousands of backhands in the course of a couple of hours. We would hit backhands so often that we got to the point where you wanted somebody to test your backhand because you got so confident in it. And from a value standpoint, are you being clear about the value that you provide? And are you confidently displaying the value that you believe you have for the person you're talking to? Because we all understand that there are people that we meet that we just are attracted to because we just think their energy is great. We don't think there's anything shady about them. We think they're transparent. We think they're confident. We think they're a good person. We think their interest is truly in other people and it's not about bragging about themselves. And there are all these little dynamics that go into every interaction that you have with a buyer or a seller. And when you're sitting at a kitchen table or sitting at a conference room table to go over the value that you provide and why someone should choose you over anybody else in the marketplace. Do you understand your value, and are you able to convey that in a very compelling, clear, concise, confident, and amiable way so that people just can't help but just want to work with you and feel like this is the person that's going to help me get there. This is the person that's going to fly me through the turbulence of buying real estate and not panic along the way. That's what we're trying to do.
And a book that I think can help people with that is the book by Jeff Henderson. You probably heard of it, FOR, F-O-R. And what do you stand for? And he walks you through ways that you can easily articulate your value proposition to connect with people in a way that resonates with them and they feel really good about it.
He's the guy that was with Andy Stanley at Buckhead Church, wasn't he?
Yes, and he was one of the heads of marketing for Chick-fil-A for a while as well.
That's exactly right. He came and spoke to our ALC early on, and he was amazing, amazing. Question 3: how clear are you about where you want to go? One of the things that I loved that Tony Robbins said at Family Reunion, for those of you that were there, is he said, if you're looking at changes that are going on in your industry right now, or the market that it's in right now, and that's consuming your screen, then you're not really clear about where you're going and what kind of business you're building for the long term. And he just he really did a good job of making people think, what do I want to be known for, and what kind of an agent reputation do I want to have 5 and 10 years from now? And when you start thinking about where you want to go in that capacity, it really makes the market of the day pretty irrelevant, because you're already figuring out, I'm going on to bigger and better places, and it really doesn't matter what the market's doing, what the interest rates are, what the NAR settlement creates for me. I'm going to be an awesome agent in 5 or 10 years, and this is the business I'm going to have. This is the lifestyle I'm going to be living because of the business that I do. And you need to be really clear about where you want to go. 4, what are the conversations you should be having, but you're not? What conversations do you should be having, but you're not? And these conversations could be with one of 3 groups. 1, yourself. What conversations do you need to be having with yourself that you're not having? Where are you not being honest about yourself in the business that you're running? The other is with your team. And lastly, with your clients and your customers. What conversations do you need to be having, but you're not having? Strike a chord with anybody? Yeah, should. 5, If life is about the mastery of micro moments, if life is about the mastery of micro moments, where are you succeeding in the moments that matter? And where are you failing? Like generally, we go through our days, but through our days, we do have interactions that matter. And sometimes we knock those interactions out of the park, and sometimes we screw them up. And sometimes it's just a matter of going, I don't, and talking about this earlier, we're failing in our buyer presentation. That's a micro moment for me that I'm a 6 out of 10 on, and I need to get to an 8 or a 9 out of 10. It could be as simple as that. But when you think about the moments that matter, when you have moments that you're dealing with in this business, where are you succeeding in moments that really matter? And where are you falling? Six. I think because of this question came to me because I feel like that people get caught up in the difficulties of what goes on, and we just kind of forget about where we've been. So the sixth question is, what is something that you never thought you would get over but did? What is something that you never thought you'd get over at the time but did? It could be a death, it could be a divorce, it could be getting fired from a job, it could be a gazillion things. Right? I mean, it just but the point is you've gotten through some tough stuff in your life, and when you're going through something in the moment, we tend to forget about all the victories we've had in our past that that prepared us to. So whenever if you're dealing with any stress or struggles, or the market's bothering you, or you're having a harder time than ever before, realize this is not the first hard time you've ever had, and you've probably lived through harder times than this, and you've gotten through them just fine. Just remember, what did you do to do it? How did you get through it? Did you have to change something in order to do it? And what did you realize about yourself after you got through it? And go back to that, because it's pretty empowering, because we don't always, we like to forget about the things that caused us a lot of pain and that were hard. But the truth of the matter is they made us stronger. And there is a sense of pride in getting through really hard things. And I'm not asking you to go back and wallow in whatever that might have created for you emotionally. But I do want you to go back and realize you kicked some ass over some pretty hard stuff in your life. And it's not a bad thing to go back and remember that, because it's going to prepare you to get through the next hardest thing that you're dealing with. 7. What do you love most about your opportunity to do what you do? What do you love most about the opportunity to do what you get to do? All of us got in this business for a lot of different reasons. But I would venture to say that most of us actually stayed in this business for things and reasons far different than what got us into the business. It's really important you get tapped into what you love about this business and why you love it, because that becomes a constant. What comes up for people when I say that? Like, what surprised you about what you love about this business?
I'll go with that, Sean. It oftentimes has nothing to do with real estate.
Right. Right.
It's help, it's counsel, it's challenge, it's seeing smiles on people's faces, getting challenged yourself, figuring out problems, meeting great people like are on this call, all the other stuff, and real estate.
Yeah. It's never boring. It's pretty human. We get to be problem solvers for people who aren't necessarily great problem solvers. And I think that at the end of the day, I think what you love about it is you're always coming from contribution. You always have something to offer to make somebody's life a little better, or life a little easier, or life a little more profitable, or life a little sweeter. I mean, it's just, it's kind of what we do. And I would not forget about that. Here's a hard one. And this one is, where in your life or business are you flirting with disaster? Where in your life or business are you flirting with disaster? There was a, I think in the 1980s, some of the, if you're a sports fan, there was one of the greatest football comebacks of all time. Contrary to popular belief, it was not when the Patriots beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl. It goes back to like when it was the Houston Oilers. And I can't remember who they played, but it was like I think it's the biggest comeback in football history. Does anybody remember that game? Any of the sports fans up here? But it's kind of, I remember watching an interview, but if you can picture like a game where you're so far ahead that you don't even consider the fact that you would lose, right?
They overcame a 35-3 deficit.
Okay, right. That was, who did they play?
They played Buffalo Bills.
Buffalo Bills. And actually, that might have actually been equal to the Falcons Super Bowl, frankly. But I remember an interview around that years later, and somebody asked the coach of the Buffalo Bills, and they said, at what point in the game did it occur to you that you could lose? And I never forgot that question, because I thought, that's a really great question. I mean, like, this team didn't think they thought they were so far ahead they were never going to lose, but they lost. Like, was it right before they lost that they woke up and figured that out? Was it when they scored their first touchdown or their second touchdown or their third? At what point did they think, holy shit, I could lose? We could actually lose this game. And I think obviously the answer to that was too damn late. And this question on where are you flirting with disaster, I want you to think about yourself as the coach of the Buffalo Bills in that game, and realize that where is there a part of your life that could win that shouldn't? Where could you lose in a particular part of your life that you should never lose? And it might be with your business, it might be with an employee, it might be with your spouse, it might be with your children, it might be with your faith, it might be with alcohol, it might be with, I don't know what it is, but where are you flirting with disaster that you need to realize, hey, I'm flirting with disaster. And if I don't change something, I'm going to lose. So that's a biggie for me. Kind of goes hand in hand with this, but the next is number 9, and that is, in what aspects of your life and business are you the least prepared? In what aspects of your life and business are you least prepared? Jerry and I have just gone through the process, and we're waiting to finalize it, of going through all of our personal affairs and wills and trusts, and man, nothing is more taxing in a second marriage than figuring out who gets what happens when you die, who dies first, how does this get split between these kids that are all so different. It has prompted some pretty intense conversations in our household, but we realized we did a will when we got married in 2015, and it was basically on a napkin. and it was outdated. And we just realized if something happened, it would be irresponsible of us to not have all these bases covered. And we've really been diving into making sure we were doing the right thing. And so it's kind of been on my mind a little bit, and that's a big one. But I think there are other things that could be examples for that as well. But where are you least prepared, and what can you do to get prepared in your life and business? 10, what do you feel most guilty about not doing? What do you feel most guilty about not doing? My guess is the easy answer for that is lead generation somewhere. That's and if I had to guess, that's generally the common theme where most people know what they need to do. They pass, they get 100 on the test, but then when they leave the classroom to go actually live it, they don't live it. They fail the activity, but they pass the theory of the test. So what do you feel guilty about not doing? And is there anything that you can do to move from guilt to confidence? I've got 2 bonus questions. In what area of your business would it be more beneficial for you to think less and act more? In what area of your business would it be beneficial to think less and act more? And then 12, last question, is the opposite of that. In what area of your business would it be beneficial to act less and think more? All right, so you got all 12 questions I've prepared for today. Who wants to talk about one that jumps out at them that's sticking with you?
Sean, I have one question. Number 4, what are the questions that I should be having, but I'm not? I'm seeing a lot of posts on social media. I'm seeing letters go to the database, kind of getting in front of this whole thing with the commissions and stuff like that. And I kind of I've been handling it as people have contacted me directly. Should I be proactive and get out in front and explain it to people that haven't even raised their hand and asked the question yet?
No, I don't think I would be proactive at all with this at the moment, at least publicly. I mean, I'm watching people bitch and moan and complain on social media, and just, I think they're showing their ass, if you want to know my true opinion of it. And I think that I think right now I would go into observer mode, and I would look at who's making smart posts, and what makes them smart in your opinion. Who's making stupid posts? Who's clouding the water? You're going to get all kinds of good conversation topics if you just sit back and watch this shit show unfold. And I would just be a great observer of what's going on with social media, and I would not participate. I think the minute you post something that's opinionated, I think you would end up there's a chance you could have a 180-degree turnaround, or this ship moves in a different direction in the next 60 days than what it looked like it was going to do coming out of the port. So I think I would just watch, John, and I think I would just realize that I think right now it's those moments that matter, those micro moments. When somebody has a question, I think it's important that you handle it confidently, concisely, and matter-of-factly, so that there's no reason to talk about it any further. I think they'll take your lead on it. But I think if you go out and make some kind of posting about your opinion or the industry or whatever, everybody's getting bombarded with that, and none of it matters. I mean, none of it matters. Like, even if you did that, you still have the same individual conversations with people you're going to have. And I think those are the moments that matter when you're dealing with this.
Great. That was the approach I was taking.
Yeah, that's what you're dead on. You usually are dead on though. You're pretty smart, dude.
Thank you.
And I want to give props to Kevin Mejia really quick. He called me yesterday and said, "Hey, what should I do about this? Should I reach out to my sellers? Should I have conversations with them?" And he ended up reaching out to every single one of his sellers and said, "Hey, you've probably got questions. You're probably hearing a lot of things going on in the news right now. I want to let you know I'm here. I'm your advocate. Any questions that you have, don't hesitate to reach out." And what he found was not a whole lot of people were really worried about it.
No.
Yeah.
And it's like anything, I don't think they're really worried about it until they're worried about it, right? I mean, if they're not trying to sell a house or they don't want to buy a house, it's just noise at the moment. But the minute it becomes $1 on the table for them to save or to spend, then they're gonna have questions. But I think you just need to stay uber close to your people and make sure they continue to see you as a professional you always are. Don't get sucked into the fray of mediocrity and these mediocre mindsets and what people are doing. It's just not worth it. What other questions jump out at anybody on here?
Frankie, go ahead.
Okay, so the question that jumped out at me the most is question number 10. We all know that the number one thing, and that's what do you feel guilty about not doing? So I am prospecting. That doesn't, that's not even a question. I'm calling every single day. I'm doing it. Now, what I feel guilty about is I'm holding myself back in the amount of time and people that I'm reaching because of the fact that I'm not mastering my morning. And so I feel guilty for not mastering my morning, because if I mastered my morning, the rest of the day will fall into place, meaning I would be more present for my kids. I'd be able to set, appointments earlier because I finished my calls earlier. I'll be able to talk to more people, expired, physicals, and etc. They haven't talked to other agents, so they're not as frustrated, so it's easier to get an appointment. So I feel like if I master my morning and I stop finding excuses, then my whole business will change. And it falls into, with the NAR settlement, listing, like Mike said, listing is the way to go. And that's exactly what I'm doing. So I'm not really worried about going to buyer's presentation. I'd rather do 3-4 hours of lead gen and not worry about a buyer's presentation, but that's my opinion. And that was the question that stood out the most.
So I've got a follow-up for you, Frankie, and two actually. First of all, let's not forget that when a seller sells their house, they become a buyer. So we do need to make sure that we while we're focusing on listings, there is another side of that coin that's super important. Secondly, the question I would love to know is, what gets in the way of you mastering your morning?
My cell phone.
So give me a breakdown. Like, tell me, do you have an idea of what the perfect morning for you looks like?
So I get up at 5.
Right.
And I'm always on my phone. So if I were to get up at 5, take a shower, get ready, read a personal development book or Audible, then I drive over to the office. When I'm at the office, listen into 2 or 3 trainings. I have trainings that pertains to like listings and physicals and all that stuff. Listen to the training and then get on the phone by 8 a.m. And prospect from 8 a.m. to 12 until I get 5 listings, and then I can prospect from 8 to 11. And so then at that point, well, for now it's 8 to 12. And then as long as I get my morning done by my 12, I think everything else will fall into place.
Don't
And
disagree.
Frankie, are you going to text when you get started?
Yes, I know. I'll start texting you, I promise.
So tell me what gets in the way of that.
I want to say social media, but it's not. It's actually the games on my phone. Should I do?
Really?
Yes. Is that there's this whole community and there's so many interesting people and they start talking and they're from all over the world and you just find out about all this stuff and it's cool, but it's getting in the way of me growing my bank account and me spending time with my kids.
So like some people, like some hardcore coaches would say that the activities that you're doing are your priorities. Right? And they would say, if you're saying that, what you're saying is that playing games on my phone is more important than my children. I mean, that's what like a hardcore person would probably respond to that, which is kind of a hard one to swallow. But at the same time, there is some truth to it. And I think there's not anybody on this call, by the way, that struggles with what they want to do, what they need to do, what they intend to do, and actually doing it. And everybody's got a different level of procrastination that falls. In some people, it's this takes them away. And some people, it's this that takes them away. And some people, it's this that takes them away. But if you know that there's something that generally is predictable that kind of gets in your way like that, what I would tell you is I would almost treat it like somebody who was trying to quit smoking. And I had a friend that had to go through that, and the only way that she figured out how to quit smoking was she had to do it like in small bites at a time. And she thought, so she did it where I think she started where I can't, what was it? I can't smoke. I think she started with I can't smoke in my car years ago. I mean, it was like that was the first thing. And then once she kind of felt like she had a grip on that, it was like, okay, now I can't smoke in my car and I can't smoke before noon, right? And then it was like, okay, then I had this window. And once she got that mastered, it was like, then I can't smoke before 5. And then it just, the window just got to where it was just so small that it just became easy to close it and be done. And I would almost suggest just listening to you that maybe look at it and say, okay, put a rule around and say, okay, I'm not going to do this or play these games at this time. I can only do them after such and such a time. I'll still play them, but the rule is not now or not then, because it screws up my day.
And I will do that.
Well, and it may work and it may not, right? I mean, when you're struggling with something like that, and staying on track is a struggle, no matter who you are, where you are, what on track looks like. It's a struggle, and it's a harder struggle for some than others, but for the most part, it's a struggle. And you're just going to have to figure out how to do a trial by experiment. I mean, everything's just an experiment. Let's try it this way. Let's try it this way. Oh, that seemed to work today. Let's see if it works tomorrow. Oh my God, that worked 3 times this week. Maybe that's something I should do more often. I mean, and by the same token, you may go, well, that didn't work at all. That was stupid. And I got to find another way to do it. I'm glad it worked for that person because it didn't do anything for me. And part of it's just understanding who we are and what our issues are and trying to put it in a context that makes us go, it's kind of stupid that this stupid thing is ruining my day or throwing my entire day off. It's not worth it. You know, in the scheme of things, it's just not worth it.
It's not worth it. In fact, it makes me spend more money. So, yeah.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Yes. Thank you for your feedback. I am going to put it into consideration. And I'm glad I said that because now I have other people who want to hold me accountable. So
you know what? It's this kind of group is powerful in that regard. I mean, it's I think I said this not long ago. I remember 30, maybe 25 years ago, we had a mastermind lunch like this. And we were doing bucket lists, and somebody at the time said, one of the girls said, one of my bucket lists is to go see Madonna in concert. This was like literally 25 years ago. And I think it was 5 years later that Madonna came to Atlanta, and she said she got like 10 phone calls from people that were at that lunch 5 years before and said, I just heard Madonna's here. I knew I never forgot you said that was important to you. So these little calls where you've got friends and people that care about you around you, it does work, and they will try to help keep you in between the lines. So yeah, I'm glad you said that too. Congratulations.
thank you.
Who else has a question that hit them? Made you think? I see Jen Doak. Hey, Jen Doak. I love you, Jen Doak.
Love you too, Sean. Thanks for doing this. It means the world to me.
I'm so glad. You mean the world to me. Thanks for being there. Anybody, one more question?
If number 9 hasn't hit anybody, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
Right? In what aspects in life or business am I the least prepared?
It's a
Like
good
if
one.
that's not if that's not a gut check, I don't know what is.
Is there something that jumps out for you, Michael?
Absolutely. When I think about making sure that we have a will in place and making sure that we have a life insurance policy in place. And, I'm fortunate to have Jessica kind of handle all of our finances, and everybody knows what a whiz she is in that. And I should have more control, more understanding of those items. So absolutely.
Yeah, it's good. It's and just going along with that, I mean, it's it's like I bought a safe in the process of doing all this, and I got everything out of a safety deposit box, and I bought a safe that I keep in my closet that and it's not for like expensive stuff. It's just documents and stuff. It's birth certificates and titles to cars and jewelry appraisals and just, stuff that you need to have. And then, but now we've created this master sheet of like, if something happens, here's our accountant you call, here's the life insurance broker, here's the attorney that drew up our will, here's the code to the safe, here's whatever, here's, I mean, it's having that document, and then having that document, having the most important people know where that document is. And we've got it in a drawer right now, and we keep thinking of stuff like, what else we need to know? And we just kind of write and scribble it down, and ultimately we'll end up making this thing. But it sounds silly, but I mean, when you really think about it, I mean, if you've known anybody who've like lost somebody, I think the greatest gift in the world you can give them is like directions of what to do and where to go, and take all the, I don't know what to do, or how do I do that, or where do I go, or what does that look like? It's a
Especially
sobering.
when they also own businesses, Sean.
Yeah. For business, for businesses, it's a big deal. Here's who you talk to about this. And yeah, it's there's a lot that happens if that happens. And it's I mean, look, time flies, right? I mean, you think about it at one point, and next thing you know, it's 10 years later, and somebody your age that you went to high school with just dropped out of a heart attack, and you're going, holy crap, I'm at that age where people can actually, I could actually, I mean, it's just kind of, you just go through it. But it's one of those adulting things that when you're looking at it, you really kind of feel stupid because you're not prepared. But that's kind of the world as we know it, and it's you can't feel guilty about it. You just gotta start getting prepared, and it's one thing after another after another. And there are people. The good news is there are people you can pay to make sure you are prepared, and just do it. But no, that's I learned that one the hard way, and I'm kind of still walking the walk, getting through it. But it's hard. I mean, it does create some very interesting conversations, and you realize how unclear things are. Like, if you just, what do you think? What do you think I'm supposed to do when I die? Do I want to be cremated, or am I going to be buried? Well, I really don't know. We've never really talked about that. Okay, well, let me tell you my thoughts on it. Just silly stuff. Silly stuff. Anybody else? Any party shots? Any thoughts?
Sean,
Yes.
I don't get the pleasure of chiming in a lot because we've been dealing with everything like everybody else, family, and try to prioritize. But I will say that when we bring value to people's lives, when we create that trust, when we create that guidance where they feel like they're getting a professional, that's when we earn it. That's when we actually show them, we get their expectations set. We maybe even put it in writing of what they should expect and how we're going to deliver it. And if we don't meet those expectations, we actually tie our own profit to it. So if I can't deliver what I promised, then I guess I'm reducing my commission.
Well, I think that's a great point. I mean, one of the things I've always thought is funny about this business is everybody looks like a rock star when it's easy. And a lot of agents go through transactions and they hope nothing goes wrong. But I really think that people that are really good at what they do actually kind of a little bit hope some shit goes wrong. Because when some shit goes wrong and I get to solve it, and I get to solve it in a way that makes everybody realize that I'm kind of a badass at solving problems, then they realize that they made the right decision and hired the right guy. It's interesting to, we can talk value all day long, but it's not until something goes wrong that we get to prove it. So we're in a business where we have a lot of opportunities to show up and you know, I've always said we are that pilot in a plane, and some people are the pilot that comes on and says, "Oh my God, we're all going to die. I've never seen turbulence like this in my life. I don't know what to do." Right? Or there's the guy that comes on and says, "Hey, buckle up your seatbelt. We're going to be flying into some bumps and we're going to get through it in about 15 minutes, but just know it's just going to be fine and we'll get through it on the other side. And I'll let you know when you can go pee when we're through it all." Right? And they just kind of, you can go, and that's how they handle it. But
That's what
it's,
people need. People need
Yeah.
that guidance. They need that reassurance. They want to have the therapy of the moment. Now, not everybody. Maybe there's 20% that could do anything on their own, don't need anybody. But the other 80%, they need that reassurance.
that is correct. And I think the better you are at conveying that, the more value you're going to provide to the consumer. So Jeff, I think you're dead on, and I appreciate you. And I love the photo of you flying through the sky on your jet ski, buddy.
All
Well,
right.
listen,
That was a beautiful day, and that's what we have here. We have a beautiful place to live, and we should tell everybody about this. Is like, in my opinion, heaven on earth.
Yeah, it is a special place for sure. Listen, you guys are awesome. I really look forward to these calls every month, and I hope that they add value to your world and make you think a little bit more about what you do and how fortunate you are and what the opportunities you have ahead of you. We're going to get through the next 4 months brilliantly. But I would stay in observation mode, and I would stay in preparation mode, and I would get really good at your buyer presentation, and I would not feed into fear, and I would realize that we're going to figure out what business is going to look like as usual over the next few months, and it's probably going to be different than what all the headlines are saying now. I do find it very funny that we can't talk about commission rates as an industry because it would be collusion, but everybody else can print that we have a standard 6% commission that's going to go away in national headline news. I'm just like, this is the stupidest thing. How come we can't even utter the words, but everybody can post them on headlines like they're gospel? It's
Right.
it's pretty funny, but we got a lot. It's gonna be interesting and it's gonna be fun. Just keep your mindset right, keep your attitude tight, and know that we're gonna get through this and we're gonna find a way to win and succeed where other people are still looking for the light switch.
All right. We appreciate y'all for being here. Thanks so much. Have an amazing day, and go change the world. See you later.
Take care, everybody.